And I'm frustrated because there's so many people who really don't think we can get out of this position. They think we're just going to be captives forever. And if everything starts with mindset, and I'm talking once again, I'm talking about the people with the knowledge,
Mhm.
the people with the knowledge, the people who's supposed to know, older people who've been studying this 20 years before we were born. The idea is we cannot get out of this mess. It's Friday once again. Breakdown Friday. It's me, Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Johnson. When we up in the building on this Friday, y'all already know what it is. We bringing the heat. We're bringing the truth. We're bringing that fire. We're bringing that passion, and we bring in thoughts for change to spark actions to make change within our communities. Because we're not sitting here just sitting on the information, feeling good because we know the information. Dang it. I can't curse too early. Oh, it's 30 seconds. Okay, damn it. We want to make changes. All right. So that's what we're doing today. So this is going to be part 2 of our 3-part series as we are breaking down clips from Professor Carl Tone Jones's landmark documentary, The Independence Day Project. So make sure you go check out last week's video. All right. As we talked about what is Black independence. So today we're going to further that conversation, and we're going to wrap our conversation around culture. What type of culture can produce an independent Black community? What what goes into the culture? What type of influence should the culture have? How does culture influence independence? That's why I want to send this conversation around. So, hey man, let's not waste too much time. Let's get into it. We're gonna and so last week's clip was around 2 minutes, so I let the whole thing play. So this one we're gonna break it down as we go. So let's do it.
Transition from talking about a community, we also have to begin to talk about culture. Because culture is something that, for some reason, we seem to not really focus on, but a culture has to be in place that promotes whatever it is that we're trying to develop. Otherwise, it won't be supported. Culture is the scaffolding, the foundation that everything is built on.
They have a culture or a way of life that automatically protects them from some of the damages of this system. And that's where we are not protected. We don't have that culture or that code of conduct, precepts, way of life to protect us under this system of white domination.
You can't talk about
So stop right there. Culture is the scaffolding that helps protect the community. Culture is the installation, something that helps insulate the culture, the community. Culture is something that helps produce the people in the community, the way they walk, talk, think, act, interact with each other, all these different things. And so in the clips, we're talking about how culture affects independence. And that's where the conversation, where I want to take the conversation. So when I'm listening to that first, I'm thinking that, okay, especially nowadays in 2023, because we have to think in modern terms where we are now. What type of culture would we need to create to produce an independent mindset before we even get to an independent community? So I think we would have to show, like, it would have to start with some actions. It can't just be talk. It would have to be action. So we have to have people taking active steps towards independence. We'll have to have people taking active steps towards creating a space of our own. Now, a lot of people, I see comments and I talk to people, a lot of people don't think that we can create our own space within system of white supremacy, even though it's global. So a lot of times I think I hear people saying that we can't do anything. I hope that's not what people are saying, but some people probably are saying that. But I'm saying what I'm saying because be- I'm thinking about a mindset before we even get to the community, before we even get to actual independence. You have to have that independent mindset, and to create that mindset, what goes into creating a mindset? Well, mindset has to be shaped, it has to be molded, it has to be programmed. And some of the programming that goes into it is what this person is taught, what this person observes, what this person experiences, and what they're taught, what they observe and what they experience should all be things that are geared towards independence. They should see people being as independent as possible. They should be given messages of independence. They should learn about independence. They should emulate independence. They should walk independence. They should talk independence, because it has to be a part of every fabric of the way we live, the way we exist, if we're really talking about creating a true independent community. So that's my thought. Those are my mindsets. Start with you, PC, this week. You want to react to what I said, or your ideas and thoughts that goes into just even the baseline, the basis of a culture of independence?
Well, I think it starts with a vision. First of all, you got to be able to visualize and create the picture of what independence looks like for you, looks like for your people, looks like for your community. You have to first start with that, I believe. So, and that was the purpose of the Independence Day Project, because too often you ask people that very question: what does independence and liberty look like to Black people, or people who are African descent of the African diaspora? And you would get, if you ask 100 people, you get 100 different answers. And that's because we all start from the grassroots in our conversation, but we never quite start our destination. We never start with our destination in mind. So I believe that we need to have that vision first. We also have to have faith that this vision, based on best practices, based on lessons learned through history, we'd have to have faith that with the work is going to be worth the outcome, or the outcome is going to be worth the work. You know what I'm saying? Because, we have a lot of people who just don't understand the type of work, integrity, and when I say integrity, I'm speaking to the strength and how strong this particular, vision has to be, the effort toward it, the practical application you're talking about, into building it, not just in theory, not just in, the who's who, the Jeopardy questions people like to answer in regards to Black history and things of that nature. Another part is we have to be fearless. And what that mean, that doesn't mean that we are reckless, but it means that we function from a place where fear doesn't operate us. Fear is not our driver, it's not our motivation. Not always. Some places fear works. You know what I'm saying? But the fire that we light under this has to be based in a stoic movement towards that place, of freedom, where we can't be stopped, we can't be denied. And we have to be okay with failing. Most places, most people that sought for their independence, they didn't succeed the first time. They may not have known what they were going up against, their adversaries and so forth, the obstacles that were in their way. And we have to be persistent with understanding that we're going to fail along the way until we finally succeed. And then once we succeed, we have to find a way to protect it. And we also have to make sure we maintain our support, because the powers that be will put pressure, apply pressure, and they will find our weak spots. We have been made a weak people because we have put ourselves in position to where other people can control our day-to-day living. They can control whether we eat or not, whether there's a power grid or not, whether there's water flowing through our towns or not. I mean, we saw what happened with Flint. We see what's happening with Jackson. So we have to understand those things and be willing to put ourselves to support ourselves so that we become the resource that's needed to propel this engine toward liberation. And I land my plane right there.
All right, Patrick.
In addition to what you two said, not to retread old tires, I think we have to have pride, right? Like real pride. In terms of seeing who we are, liking what we see, and being resistant to any efforts made to change that image. I think one of the problems we have is it goes back to what PC said about vision. We don't have one. And then a lot of the things that we say we love about being black, we're very quick to shed them in non-black spaces. Like we're very quick to change up and become more accommodating for other people when other people come around. And that, that's something that you see in personalized individual behavior, but it also is something that you see on a larger cultural collective community dynamic. And it makes it so that we are very malleable. That goes back to that superpower we have of being adaptive.
Mhm.
Um, and that particular superpower makes it really, really hard to build a culture that is protective of the people that are members of it, because we want to flex, we want to sway, we want to swing, go whatever way's the easiest. And so in that, I think once those people that are interested in developing a culture visualize it and plan it, because everybody's not going to be interested in it, is going to then become necessary for those people who are enacting that plan, as well as those people that have planned the culture, to begin to build in safeguards and mental blocks and cultural roadmaps and things like that that make resisting negative influence something that happens naturally and automatically. And I think again, it goes back to pride. Pride is what that is: cultural pride, community pride, pride in who we are, not pride in the sense of arrogance, but pride in the sense of loving who I am and not really seeing the need to change unless it's something that really benefits the collective.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the main things we're all talking about, but especially you two, starting with mindset, will, faith, belief, like like ideas that I can, like the thought of I can. We can do this. I think this is on point because, and it's right on time because, and I'm frustrated because there's so many people who really don't think we can get out of this position. They think we're just going to be captives forever. And if everything starts with mindset, and I'm talking once again, I'm talking about the people with the knowledge,
Mhm.
the people with the knowledge, the people who's supposed to know, older people who've been studying this 20 years before we were born. The idea is we cannot get out of this mess. We cannot get out of this system. We cannot reverse anything. We're going to be bound to second, third, fourth class citizenship, and we're going to be bound to a labor class forever. And the best thing we can do is just find the most comfortable spot in this. That's unacceptable. That's weak. It's unacceptable to just okay, don't learn this information no more. Stop wasting your time learning this information. If the best you're gonna get out of this is, oh well, I got the information, but we can't do nothing about it, we can't do nothing with it. You wasting your time.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
you talking to other people and giving them your ideas of scarcity.
yeah, but you spoke about something that gets overlooked, and that's the will. And it's an unfathomable, excuse me, I made another word up, unfathomable amount
That's a
of
word.
pressure that's applied to have that type of will. You go back to the Avengers movies, and Thanos was talking about people wanting a better place, but not having the will to see it through. And the will meant you have to see through some things that are going to be tough, make sacrifices. I mean, he gave up his daughter in order to
Yeah.
see it through, on his quest. And most of us are not willing to make any sacrifices. Excuse me. The sacrifices of day-to-day life. I think I read in the comments last week when somebody said, why do we have to give up the internet in our cars again? Well, it's not saying you have to, but if you had to, could you?
Right.
And would you? And at
I
what
think somebody
part?
replied with that too.
Right. So So it's about a lot of things. But if you don't have the will to see it through, you might as well not start the journey. But we see a lot of people quitting along the way.
And keep that to yourself. Stop talking to other people about that. Stop telling other people. Stop trying to discourage other people and recruiting people to be inactive like you are. If you don't want it, cool. But keep that to yourself.
Well, I know why they do that. I know exactly why they do that.
Why is that?
Because if somebody else succeeds in terms of actually pulling it off, and you had the same opportunity, but you couldn't pull it off, you chose not to pull it off, then it exposes a lot of people for not having that will, expose a lot of people for quitting, expose a lot of people for maybe a little bit of cowardice or not having that gusto, that prestige or whatever that led that other group of people to finally overcome that hurdle. So they look at it from a perspective of self-preservation of their image in terms of the community and these little conscious kingdoms that they create. And, you know, it's a challenge to their perceived influence and their perceived importance. So I know why they discourage other people from doing it. So it's unfortunate, but it happens. Ego is a crazy thing.
Okay, Pat, you look like you was loaded, but you good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's move forward.
About having an independent community, we're talking about the importance and the influence of culture. Culture is it's the glue, it's the mortar, you know what I'm saying, that is used to put together, a brick home.
We don't have that. So whereas we have a mass amount of people who may not go gravitate and read every history book that they can get and try to make sense and put the pieces together of this puzzle to understand this white supremacist system, we are just like any other group of people, except our culture has been stripped from us.
I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge that we are Africans. And once we begin to acknowledge that we are Africans, then we can begin the process of changing our lifestyle. As long as we try to fit into this American culture and society, we deny ourselves who we really are.
And I said, if we were to
stop it right there. So, we talked about especially the piece, Brother David Barnes. I'm gonna deal with that first. We talked about that before because he made me think about one of the breakdowns we had in the past when we were asking, do we specifically need to identify with African cultures for us to find our independence as Black people here in America? And we've said it plenty of times. We're not saying be disconnected from Africa, but we are saying we need to cultivate ourselves as Black people in America and develop our own culture, our own thoughts, our own traditions, and our own ways of us as Black people in America. Do we have some African influence? Yes, but we're going to have influence from, well, at this point, we're going to have influence from whoever we choose to take the influence from. I do think we will have some African influence, but I do still think that the culture and the mindsets need to be developed from a Black American standpoint rather than trying to identify with cultures in Africa that we really don't have connections to as of right now. That's my thought on that one. What y'all say?
This is something PC and I talk about a lot, and Joe, we talk about a lot too. And it's a contentious topic. Because on one side you do have the pro-Black Pan-Africanist community that feel this particular way. The way that Brother David Barnes said, we need to identify as African. And then you got the technical tests like me, who we kind of on our own little branch where we like, all right, well, which part? And then you got, PC, who has come in and kind of laid that to rest by saying, well, because we're kind of taken from all over Africa, we lay claim to the whole goddamn continent.
Choose what you want to choose.
So and like I said, when PC said that, it did kind of lay that whole what part to rest, because we are kind of taken from everywhere. Nobody knows where
Right.
we're from. But I think the most important part is that Black people need to, culture is a shared history, a shared memory, a shared way of life between people, that they can identify each other. We need to identify with each other first and foremost before we start identifying with anything across
I
any
feel.
bodies of waters. I don't care if it's rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, or oceans. We need to identify with the people that's on the same land as us first. Um, and then even to what Sister Kara said, because this is that's another, and that this particular clip is interesting because it provides a lot of what have become contentious ideas
The
about how we
diversity
move
in the
forward.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we kind of got to deal with. I'm familiar with uh Sister Carol Poole and Brother David Barnes, and I
Hmm.
respect both their opinions
Hmm.
immensely. But Black people, look at what's happening. We're allowed to disagree. Joe and I
Right.
have disagreed with people before, and there have been people that couldn't handle it in the comments. As Black people, we got to be mature enough and adult enough and intelligent enough to understand that disagreements happen. That flexibility of thought and variety of spice is what gives communities their strengths. If everybody was thinking the same, a problem that arose that we couldn't solve would never be solved because everybody's thinking the same. So we need that variety of thought. As far as what she's saying, I view it a lot like homeschooling. People that say we don't have a culture. We have a culture. It's just not a positive one. You can't put people together and have them not create a culture. So we have a culture, and the reason I harp on that is because, like, again, it's like homeschooling. If you just pull your kid out of school and start trying to teach them, they're not gonna receive it. You gotta unschool them first. You gotta get them to unlearn all of the behaviors, the traits, the mannerisms, the ideas and thoughts and modalities, all of the ways that the hidden curriculum that exists in school that gets your child to be functional at that establishment and in that culture. You gotta undo all of that before you can do something new with your child. And it's the same with the Black community. If we didn't have a culture, we could just bring something and then throw it out there. But because we have a culture and it's not a positive one, we got to figure out how to undo what's been done. So that it is, again, it's just because PC and I have that conversation all the time as well. Well, not no more, but we used to like years ago. Um, because I think we've come to a consensus on that. But it's one of those things where I don't think we have to identify with Africa or as African. Excuse that. I do think we need to acknowledge that we are descendants of African peoples. We need
Hmm.
to stop running from that. And we need to pull influences from positive African cultures that kind of feel good to us, that feel natural to us, and that move us in the right direction. But I don't think we need to identify as African specifically to do that. And that's just me being very literal about it. And as far as what Sister Carol Poole said, I do think we have a culture. And I think part of the headache is every time we try to do something new, the culture we have steps in and is very resistant to change. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. Why the fuck would we do that? White people ain't doing that. This is literally what people say.
Yeah.
White people don't do that. So why should we? Whenever you trying to, like, we'll have concepts, and I'm gonna stop talking soon, but we'll have ideas and concepts about business, right? Because I'm still very involved in a lot of business organizations and stuff like that. And this is something I hear all the time where I'm like, all right, well, maybe we need to look at doing this particular thing different. Well, why would I do that? You don't see JC Penney's doing that. You don't see them big successful white companies doing that. So why do Black companies have to do it? That is an example of the ingrained culture resisting change, even though what the white companies are doing are not working for us.
Mhm.
I'm done.
um, No, and look, and I think you're absolutely right. We have to be able to have discernment amongst us, and even if we have disagreements, not be disagreeable or
Right.
not be so emotionally drastic to the point where we totally miss the ballpark on points that are being made. So because I think one thing Sister Kara was talking about, and then I'll dive into what Dave is getting into, um, is that she said we don't have the type of culture that protects us or insulates us, and
True.
from the weaponry, the weaponization of white supremacy. And so therefore I agree with her on that particular perspective. And I think one of the things you're trying to build towards was that positive culture. But you're right, Pat, we do have to eradicate that death culture that we have, that culture of, that culture that thrives in toxicity, that culture that thrives in niggerdom, as we like to call it.
Yep.
That culture that thrives in, no low standards, no accountability. We always want to support and cheer things on. And if you don't, you're a hater. If you critique it, we still have that childish way of looking at the world. And that's our culture. So that does have to be unlearned. And it has to go back to the point where, and it speaks to something you said previously, Joe, about having elders who compound that problem instead of being the true griots they're supposed to be. It's ironic we're looking at a show, Sister Kara, and she has a YouTube channel called The Great Griot.
It was 5-2.
Right. It's still up, but she hasn't put anything up in a while because of, but they're not griots anymore. You know what I'm saying? Now they're trying to get hip. They're trying to be, they're influenced by the young folk.
Right.
Which is totally opposite of every other culture. There's a lineage that's set in place. And so when we start talking about being African, we do a lot of things that are African centered. We just don't call it that. When we were talking about rappers before the show, especially you and Joe were really getting into it about, different rappers. Well, when we do freestyles, typically what happens is if you have a group and, I'm not going to name, throw no names out there, but I was once upon a time in a cipher of rappers when I was in college. And one of the brothers right now is considered the best freestylist in the world. That's brother Black Thought was in that cipher, right?
Okay.
So we would be in the circle. When you think about African-centered culture, we teach and learn in the circle because of that connectivity of energy. That's African. A lot of the ways that our households used to be, with multiple generations within the house, that was African, because we didn't send our folks all to a old home or whatever for them to live in. People had issues within the family. They still stayed within the context of that home until their issues were addressed. They weren't just thrown out into the streets. But even when we had those conversations, the elders in the house would be the one teaching the children. That's African. Yeah. So we do have some of those things. We just don't call it that no more. And there's a lot of other examples, and specifically some of the un-African things we've tried, which don't work, like the setup of classrooms and the way we teach and things of that nature. For when most African teachings were done through storytelling. Not reading books, but through storytelling, and you had the griots passing the stories around. And so we have a lot of those things, and that's where you see when you have the Malcolms on the streets back in the day, and you had the street preachers on the soapboxes, and people gathered around. That was African centered, but we just didn't call it that. And we can take our own niche with that because we did get cut off. We have spiritual systems right now that are coming back into, popular culture, as you say, that are African, that sort of helps us with those connections. So I get that part. And I also do understand that and by the way, that wasn't me that coined that phrase about us being from all parts of Africa. That was Baba James Small.
That's right. You told me that. You did tell me
Right.
that.
So, and the way he stated it was, when you go to Nigeria, they call themselves Nigerians. You go to Ghana, they call themselves Ghanaian. You go to Kenya, they're Kenyans. Egypt, Egyptians, and so forth and so on. None of them call themselves Africa. They just identify with their particular part of Africa. But because we were brought here and our ancestors were brought here, and they were brought here from all points of Africa, going from South Africa to West Africa to East Africa to Central Africa, they were all brought here and mixed up. So we all have those interconnected bloodlines that span the entire continent. That's why we can all identify. That's what we can say, I'm from
Right.
Africa. I'm African.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because we don't have a specific, we got family all over the place. It's like saying, uh, you know, you're from Florida, but you got family all over Florida. So you got family from Miami, you got family from, you know, what's the Tampa Bay area. You got family from Gainesville. You got family from Pensacola. You got family from, Tallahassee. All those different things. So where y'all from? So if somebody came to your house, say, where y'all from? We from Florida. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. But
so
but it's like you saying though. It's like both of y'all are saying though. It's we will never be totally disconnected from the continent. There are
Mm-hmm.
cultural aspects and they're just aspects of us that are not going away. But like you were saying, like they did with the religions, with the African religions, they took the religions and they made them their own for where they were.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason Santeria literally exists, because they took the Yoruba and had to transform the Yoruba to make it exist in the culture in the space where they were then. That doesn't that means that they created something for themselves there, and it still had a connection back to the continent. We're doing the same thing. That doesn't mean absent of Africa, but it does mean, who are we as Black Americans? Because we keep trying to define ourselves based off of cultures and people who are not us, and who have some type of connection, but for the most part we are cut off from these people, the culture and the ways of life and all these things that we know are Black American. So who are we as Black American? And that has to go into our thoughts and our culture if we really serious about independence, those of us who are serious about independence. If
But
you
I
ain't
think
if you don't think it can happen, cool, but for those of us who are serious.
But I think that's the challenge, right? Because for us to have these conversations, we have to embrace the entirety of who we are.
Right.
And that's something that, even amongst those in the intellectual community, you seem to have those that want us to be Africans and pretend like slavery didn't happen. And they say cute things. And I don't mean cute in a disrespectful way. I mean cute in a very attractive way that's easy to latch on to. But they say cute things like slavery is something that interrupted African history.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, yes, that's true, but it was also a part of our history because it is our origin story.
For
And
Black
to deny
Americans.
that is to deny a critical part of who we are. Now, yes, I understand you saying we were a people before slavery. That is true, but it is also not true, because we
Mhm.
were a separate people and a different people before slavery. After slavery, we became the people that we are. So we have to accept that narrative. And it's also, popularized notion now is, I'm so sick and tired of slave narratives. They act like that's all Black people, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, look, you got to understand, we not that far removed from it. All right.
Nah.
And that's kind of our inception story. And until we can thoroughly accept and understand it, I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with people continuously blasting it. If my ancestors had to live through it every day for generations, the least I can do is watch 10 or 15 movies about it. Like, what are
Yeah.
we complaining about? So, but I understand that sentiment. But again, it's like, all right, we gotta. So it's not enough to just say, okay, we're African. we're going to take this from the Yoruba and this from the Ghanaians and this from these people and this from those people. And no, if you're just going to take those things, but you're not going to put something beneficial to us in the modern times, our own spin on it, yeah, it resonates with our energy, but is it who we are in this time and space? Culture is ever evolving. And the same thing moving forward is we take things, because a lot of people want to resist anything European. Look, we live in a European society. You can't get past that. Your brain, if you grew up in America, is wired European, period.
Yeah.
So you got to accept that. And you got to build within that. Now, can we think about ways to jive better with our spirit and move in those ways? Sure.
Yeah.
And we absolutely should. But this whole, well, I'm not African, I'm American. I've been in this country for 6 generations. Or on the other side, I'm not American, I'm African. I blah, blah, blah. Look, sorry. Both of y'all are right. All right. You're both right. Can we stop complaining about which side of history you want to give more value to and start building some shit? And that's for the people that's actually trying to build. If you're just interested in getting your intellectual, then go ahead and have at it. But for those people that is trying to actually put something together, we can't continue to get caught up in these types of conversations and spending crazy amounts of time essentially debating semantics and moot points.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
It is a waste of time. And you know, I when I see those things happening, I tend to just fall back, because I've recognized what's important to those people. And when I realized that that aspect of it, the narration of it, is more important than actually getting down to the work, because listen, I don't discount the fact that you need to know a semblance of your history. You need to know something to build. But what I also understand is when they had the liberation movement in Haiti, those people weren't in the history books talking about, well,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
When Nat Turner was, forking up his rebellions throughout the South, they weren't saying, well, listen, man, Crispus Attucks up there in Boston did it this way, and it basically got down to the cultural commonality and what needed to be done at that time for the particular people. And those people got to work. They got their hands dirty. They knew some of them wouldn't survive. They were willing to make that sacrifice. What we got right now, the people who are just very comfortable in this world, and most people don't take shit seriously anyway, because the internet now, you don't even have to be in the same building, same town, same state in order to talk your shit. So
just being comfortable with knowing about what's going on does not help to create a culture of independence.
Man, listen, these cats to say the same thing and walk out their house and be afraid of the same young brother that's walking down the block.
Right.
You can't live in that kind of fear and talk about being, a liberator. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And Joe, hold on. I want to say something else to what you said. And you're the one, this your fault. You brought up culture, and that's my thing. So I'm blaming you. But anyways, you brought up a good point when you talked about, because this is another one of those cultural things that we gotta undo. It's been said a lot, and a lot of people push back on it, but it's true. Black people, as a culture, as a community group, we've allowed ourselves to be defined by the lowest of us. And I don't mean that term in an insulting way. I mean that term in a way that is, these are the people who don't really have a lot of options. They don't really have a lot of choices. So the choices they make are bad choices, because if you got to choose between a bad choice and a terrible choice.
Sound Carter said that all the time. You got bad choices, you're going to make a bad decision.
Right. So, but we allow ourselves to be defined by those people, the people that don't have a lot of resources. So they're doing certain things to get by. Those are the things that become the identifiers for our community. And even when you have people, and it's weird, because when people get resources, right, They're in a rush to move out of those spaces and pretend like there's something else. But the moment the shit hit the fan or they need to be identified as black, they
Everybody
can't
got to
wait to
come together.
display that they still have this side in them. And it seemed as like a cool thing. They define the way we dress. They define the way we dance. They define the way we speak. They define the way we be. These people are doing this out of necessity and a lack of options. So it's not even, I'm not even being critical of them. I'm being critical of those people that know better but don't do better. And even to that, you know, like we were talking about with the elders, right? They define themselves now by how closely they can resemble the young people. You got Maxine Waters talking about WAP is female empowerment. You know what I'm saying? You got all kinds of, we see the elders all over the place now on social media trying to be funny and cool and cute, acting like they 15, 16 years old, dressing like they're 15, 16 years old. Those are not elders that are going to be able to push the community forward. They can't do anything but hold the community back.
Those not even the elders I'm talking about. I'm talking about the elders that's supposed to know better, that's supposed to do better, that try to walk it, that try to talk it. But like, don't tell me you have access to the information. You have others who have access to the information, who are resources who can help. And y'all can see what's going on and don't go help out. And then
Joe,
be
we
like, well,
talking about the
those
same elders. They're the same ones.
Okay, okay. But I was just, you know, even your college professors, your look at what's going on at BCU. Cause we got a live stream coming on that we gonna talk about. But look what's going on at BCU. I mean, but just even in the conscious community, older people who have the information, who still can make change, who still can do something, but they're just like, the idea is, well, we can't do nothing about this. So, hey, I'm gonna just talk about these people over here. They don't know no better. These people, they can't do no better. They don't have this. They don't have that. Oh, well, damn it, go help them. Go help them. But don't sit here and tell me that 100% of these people from these environments will never have an opportunity to have a paradigm shift. Because I come from those. All three of us come from these environments. I've stared poverty. I took poverty to the prom. Okay. I've been poor. We've been homeless twice. Don't sit here and tell me that somebody coming from some of these most disadvantaged places in earth or in life in the black community can't have a paradigm shift. Don't tell me the change can't be broke. I've seen it happen. I've done it. We've done it. We've seen it happen. It takes will. Let's move forward, man. They got me pissed off.
To implement a code of conduct than for the masses of people who simply just want to live their life. They simply just want to have a family and just live and watch that family grow old and to carry on the family name. If they had this code of conduct, this implemented culture to live by, then they could do that. And as long as they stood by the principles and lived by the precepts in this new culture, then just by living and following out this culture, it would help to fight against white supremacy.
Otherwise, if you decide not to reclaim who you would have become had your ancestors not been colonized, enslaved, what have you, you will duplicate the system that we already live in. Is that all you want?
So they wouldn't have to read thousands of books to try to understand this system, so then they can make a better do or don't decision, right? By living out this code, this new culture, their decisions would help protect their civilization against white domination.
Oh, just stop it.
I just want to let that play out.
Oh yeah, because the sister made a good point. She essentially, made the point that we made earlier.
Yeah.
If you try to create, and we've seen it. Actually, we've seen it in action. Black Wall Street was a perfect example of it. Black people trying to create a culture based on the culture that they were seeing from afar. The culture, white culture. They wanted to mimic it. A lot of us still want to mimic it, and we need to call each other out for that. And what ends up happening is you end up recreating the system where, if we want to talk about Black Wall Street, especially in Durham, and various other places all across the country, let's talk about it. Those were not egalitarian societies. Those were not equal communities. Those were communities where the vast majority of the wealth was owned and controlled by a small group of people. And we hold up that small group of people as if it was the entirety of the community. And I'm not criticizing those people. They recreated what they saw was the power structure. And so we got to be aware of that. And it's the same if we try to recreate an African culture. Well, look, we came from that. And we saw what happened to those cultures. So clearly that ain't the answer either. So there's got to be something else. If we were taken from a place and never sent back, then the place we were taken from has some deficiencies. If we were taken from a place and we were never sent back, and nobody ever came to get us, and that's not to attack,
and the place keep having deficiencies,
right? That's not to attack anybody. That's just being real about the situation. So as we create a new culture, we talked about it, we can't just be alive because we are unnaturally created people in an unnatural situation. So we got to do some unnatural shit to fix it. So as we game plan and artificially create our culture, we need to be very aware of that. If we try to mimic anything that we see around us, we already know what the outcome of that is going to be because we can see it in what we're mimicking.
Yeah, that was, and that's Sister Talea Jones. Well, she's married since then, but what I think is, you brought up a great point, Play, about Black Wall Street, because it's the one thing that people never talk about, the fact that in Black Wall Street, you did still have people, Black women in particular, who had to go to somebody's house to clean this shit up. She wasn't living in the lap of luxury. You know what I'm saying? The families weren't. Some of the families, I mean, you did, and for all the things we talk about, I've learned some things recently concerning the defense of that, of Black Wall Street. That's interesting. We'll probably talk about another time. But one of the things I think that's really key is we have to understand that we can take some of the traits and customs that are traditionally ours. But as we said before in the previous broadcast, we have to be able to learn how the most make this work for us.
Right.
And unlearn the things that perpetually make us want to replicate the things that destroyed our community and has a lopsided form of predatory capitalism, which creates the deficits that will generate a large group of us that are disadvantaged and still suffering through, perpetual poverty and low bottom class standards, even within our own culture and community. And we see that now with the boule class versus the urban classes. We still see that in these conclaves that are being developed in, different parts of the country that are bragged on as this district of Black people over here and this district of Black people over there, but they still don't manufacture anything that makes them independent of the power structure because they're in tune with it. They're not business owners, they all have jobs and positions. Some are retired from the military in certain areas of the DMV. They have nice houses. It really looks good. But if that check dries up from the VA, then all of a sudden we're seeing the different turnout because they're not dependent. They're not independent. They're dependent, and dealing with a system that has not been dependable for us in the long run. So that's where we come in with the code of conduct and understanding how do we generate a code that Black people can follow. You know what I'm saying? Like we do with PAX.org. PAXinc.org, where y'all can go to right now and see our code of conduct that we put up.
We broke it down already. We did the breakdown videos of it.
Yeah, we did. But see, Joe, the problem with that is the practical application. See, we're fine with it in theory.
Well,
but with the practical application, you know what I'm saying? Most people just won't follow through. They'll stand back. but they won't get with you in the mud. They're waiting at the finish line. They're waiting behind the velvet rope at the party so they can get in with you at the VIP, celebrate your victory, and say we all did it.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most aggravating part, is that we can act. Listen, Negroes, we can see you. We can see you. And that's the biggest, and that's the most frustrating part, because we're not generating the type of class consciousness that's needed collectively to get over this hurdle. This is why I always say we need to focus on critical masses. Dr. Bobby Wright was big on saying we got to focus on critical masses, because Black people suffer from a paradigm, you know what I'm saying, that perpetually makes us choose the worst options. And it's,
Yeah.
the mental side of a people.
Yes.
And that's what we consistently. So that's one of the cultural curses we have to break.
Yes.
And as Dr. Amos, I'm gonna say this, I'm laying my plane. As Dr. Amos Wilson always said, you can make progress as the people, but you can also regress.
Right.
And the peak of our progress was in the 70s. And we've been steadily regressing ever since, because we have not, taken heed to what's needed to create that buffer zone of culture that once stood in between us and total annihilation, for which we're actually witnessing before our eyes today.
Because the mindset of fear, the culture of fear, you keep passing down fear. It's like it's like the idea is we have to always be subservient. White supremacy is a very sophisticated, brilliant system that was put upon us. We understand how it was used and how it still works. We talk this is what we talk about on a weekly basis. I read the books on Monday. Like we're not saying we know it all, but we have a good understanding of the system. But we also understand that I don't have to continue to be a slave. I don't have to continue to be a victim. That's a choice. That's a choice to continue to have the chains on my brain. That's the choice to think that I can't create my own space. That's the choice to think that white supremacy will always reign supreme on. That's a choice. You don't have to embrace that. You could do something different. You can dare to be different. If we were only bound to be slaves, we were only bound to have the chains on our brains, then why do we have so many dang on slave rebellions?
Yeah,
on the plantations. The black people resisted the idea of inferiority on the plantations.
Some.
Right, but it happened.
Right.
And of course, remember, and I'm glad you're saying that. We're not talking about everybody. We already know everybody ain't gonna make it. But we talking about the ones who talk about that they want it, or the ones who even act like they want it, or the ones who even try to what if you're on the same page with us, that's who we talking to, damn it. Forget everybody else. All right. If you're on the same page with us, but we have to believe that it's more than just collecting information. What are we collecting this information for? To use the information, to use it to create our independent space to where we need, wherever we are in the world.
Created because we want to prove that we're smarter than all these other niggas. That's why we go after this. And I just want to be the smartest nigga. I don't want to be smart as anybody else. I want to be the smartest nigga. Don't worry, Joe. You don't get monetized for the word nigga. I found out on YouTube.
I know. I gotta beat Pat out, but other than that.
Oh shit, my bad.
But
I know how to do it now.
Imagine being a stock boy in the business, and you complaining about the conditions of the building. Oh, the building sucks. Nobody cleans around here, this, that, and the other. And then you find out one day, well, all you got to do is take 2 steps to the left and you can be running this building. You can run the owner of this company out, the CEO. You can become the CEO. And then it hits the person about, oh shit, do you mean that I'll be in charge of all the things I'm complaining about? Yeah. Does that mean I'll be in position to change it? Yeah. But you'd have to be the one to do it. And see, that is power. but we have a fear of power. We have a fear of their power, and we have a fear of what will be expected of us if we actually attain power. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we have so many procrastinators who stop just short of doing something that would actually make them dangerous to the establishment. You know, there's nobody sitting around plotting to kill anybody these days like they did back in the day of MLK and Malcolm and Medgar Evans. And there's nobody when they came for a young 21-year-old Fred Hampton. There's nobody plotting our demise because they're not afraid. They know that most of us, and it's funny because me and Pat used to have this conversation a long time. We're talking about past conversation a lot now, but we used to have this conversation about the number of black people that would be that are serious about this. And he was like, we doing percentage. What do you think the percentage would be? And Pat was really, I thought Pat, for those of you who think he's pessimistic, he was optimistic. He said something like 10%. I said, 10% of who? He said 10% of the conscious code. I said, nah, I think you probably, probably 9.99999% short. There's very few of us that are actually about what we're talking about. Some people will build their name on these social media platforms, but you go out into their communities and nobody knows who they are because they don't do any work. All they do is talk. And it looks good on here, but the real work is out there. You can put 1,000,001 memes, Facebook passages, Instagram postings of that nature. But the bottom line is this. People know when they're about to cross that line for which they might have to respond to a situation that's threatening their mere existence because their mere existence is a threat to the establishment and the power. We've all had stories about things that have happened to us off camera concerning the fact that we are serious workers in this, and our opposition knows who we are because they've had to study us.
Man,
what I'm saying? So, but there's a lot more people who they know are no threat whatsoever, and that's why they'll continue to shadow ban channels like this, but they'll continue to promote those other ones so that people can see them on a day-to-day basis.
Hey, this channel go. I hear what you're saying. But I'm just saying this channel gonna thrive. We thriving.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah. We thriving over here. But see, like I started my day off making sure this young black dude had what he needed because of the reckless encounter that he had, that he wouldn't contract HIV. That was the beginning. That's 9:30 in the morning. This is how I started my day. Going, like, making sure, because if I wouldn't have done what I needed to do, I wouldn't have done what I was supposed to. I wasn't in place. I didn't have the mindset. That young man probably would be in a worse position than what he is now because he was passed around by everybody else. All the other agencies passed him around, and they come on because they look. Everybody in this city know, in the realm of HIV/AIDS, when you need something, not just need, when you need something, there's two people you call: Matthias and Joe. That's because the work that we've put in over there. We pride ourselves in being the best. We pride ourselves in being successful. Like, we as black people, we have to demand excellence. We have to. We don't. I don't think we understand how excellent we have to be as human beings. How it's imperative. We keep saying it's imperative for us to be as great as we can be, to be as successful as we can be, to be as influential in a positive way, to help as many people as possible. But we don't need no more broke mentors. Dead serious. If you look, we know you want a mentor. We're saying this from experience. We're saying this from experience. We told y'all about our failures. We don't need no more mentors. You want to mentor somebody? Cool. Go get your stuff together first. You can't help me if you can't help you.
Yeah. And I'll even say that. I'll actually look, if you're young, because I've started mentoring as a 19, 20-year-old kid. I say it like that for a reason. Because I was a kid.
You was hanging out.
Right. I don't care. Like, look, you know, you're not ready, and we don't need you. If we were in a perfect world or in a better space, there would be a place for you to share your wisdom with kids that are 9, 10, 11-year-old. But we not there. We don't, like, you 9 times out of 10, you don't have your shit together. And they don't need to see you as an example of what to be when they 18, 19, 20. Don't start interacting with people until you at least have your mental shit together and got a plan in place for getting your real shit together. At least, at bare minimum.
Look, man, a
I
culture,
totally
like
agree
you
with
said,
that.
a culture of independence start in the mind. And it goes, and after you have the idea, you take proper action. We say this every week, broken record. After you have the idea, you take proper action. You have to believe that you can be more than just people who are under the system of white supremacy. You have to believe you could be more than that. You have to know you could be more than that. You have to work toward being more than that. If not, stop complaining.
One of the driving points of doing the Independence Day Project was the fact that I asked the Circle of Elders, what does a liberated Black space look like? And I didn't even start off with that question. I started off with, why do you do it? And what's the plan? And now it's me asking what's the plan. And when they said, well, the plan is to get up and wait for them to do something to us and we're going to respond. What the hell is that? Like, man, this is not Ali Foreman. We do not do the rope-a-dope over here, you know? So, and I was traumatized a little bit because I'm like, y'all been in this shit for like 40 years. And you don't have a plan forever. I'm like, I said, every job comes with a retirement plan. You know, even the bag boy at the supermarket, you know, if he stay there long enough, he's going to earn a retirement plan. So, you know, that was one of the reasons why I decided to come to counsel brothers like yourselves, Sister Carapool, who, you know, we just saw earlier, you know, a few others to have this conversation about how do we create a vision of liberation and independence for Black people. And that's why we really did the Independence Day film, is because all these other projects would just talk about Black people history, Black people being lynched, the fact that we had Black culture of Africans all over the world, which is cool. But at some point, we got to figure out a strategy to win and start talking about winning. And the one thing I will say about the Independence Day Project, although it didn't get a lot of accolades, it changed the conversation. Because prior to the Independence Day Project, all people talked about was the struggle. A lot of people watched the Independence Day Project, and now all of a sudden the film's coming out, we're talking about liberation and Black people being free, and we're going to show you examples of this, that, and the other. Don't think for a second that just happened in the vacuum. You know what I'm saying? That was sparked, which one of the goals of the Independence Day Project was to change the notion of the conversation from struggle to what does it look like when we win? Not if, but what does it look like when we win? How do we build that vision? It's like, and how do we reverse engineer it? It's like, you know, Google Maps. You want to know what's your destination? You punch it in, you get a visual. Okay, now these are the steps to get there. That's what we did with the Independence Day Project. So, and I thank you two brothers because you two brothers were brilliant in it. And I appreciate all the input. This is not a me project, it was a we project. And we did a damn good job of illustrating.
So you got an announcement. I want to get in early with the conversation we got going. But you got an announcement to make as well.
Oh, yeah. Tonight, Friday night. You know, your brother is jumping back into the podcast booth, you know, on the FetLife, FetLifeStation.com. FetLife, it's the FetLife station. It's an internet station. And your brother will be bringing office hours back from the hours of 7 to 8 p.m., part of a Power Pack Day. It's called Philly Fridays on the FetLife station. So make sure y'all tune in. You know what I'm saying? Tonight's my inaugural, you know, debut on let's say inaugural. Tonight is my official debut on this particular network, and I'm looking for big things. So appreciate y'all pulling up. We're going to have some wonderful conversations about the state of Black manhood. And that means, of course, we'll dabble into the relationship conversations, but only from a standpoint of what does it mean for Black men. And we're past the gender war conversations, so we're really going to focus on creating this space for Black men to understand our purpose in this aspect of nation building that we're talking about right now. So
Yep, yep,
thanks,
yep.
Joe. Appreciate you, Joe. And yeah, I look forward to it's going to
Right.
be big.
Also tonight, 10 p.m. tonight, we jump back on. We're talking about the situation going down at BCU with Ed Reed. No, does BCU really care about their students, especially with a lot of the information is coming out? Hearing what the interim president has to say, hearing what Reggie Theus has to say, hearing what Ed Reed has to say, hearing what staff and students have to say. What Ed Reed and the students saying ain't the same thing as Reggie Theus and the president saying. Somebody lying. But Roland Martin did a good job of interviewing everybody, getting a lot of the information. So we got some clips from that we're going to be reacting to and giving our thoughts on what's going on with BCUs, especially coming off the heels of the breakdown we did a couple weeks ago about the state of HBCUs, now still viable and all those things there. So Patreon, if you're not a patron, you can become a patron. You can join, you become a patron for as little as $1 a month. You can support your homeboy. And I appreciate you too, because you upped your Patreon to $11. So I appreciate you, my brother. So that's patreon.com/OTSOG. And remember, you can become a patron because I'm going live. I'm doing Patreon exclusive lives. So if you want to catch those, make sure you become a patron. And I want to give a shout out to Shokan Freestyle Marshall, my new patron. I appreciate the love. I appreciate you supporting me. And I promise to make sure I keep giving good information, quality information that really helping. But I'm not doing it by myself. My brother Patrick, my brother Carl Tone Jones, they helping me bring this content out. So I appreciate everybody who has been supporting me, everybody from around the world. Everybody from around the world. I appreciate you all. And we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but we can no longer be out here with the mindset of what we can't do. We can no longer be out here acting like white supremacy is so insurmountable that we can never get over. No. If that's how you think, this channel ain't for you. This channel is for people who want to use the information. This channel is for people who believe and know that we can actually get ourselves out of this situation. We can do something different. We can break the chains. We can create our own independent spaces. That's what we believe. That's why we studying this information. We're not studying this information just to say, I know this information and want to debate with people. No, use the information. And if you ain't using it, and if you're not going to do nothing with it, stop complaining about racism because you're wasting everybody's time and you're sucking up my air. That's all I got to say about that. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones. Once again, where can they hear your broadcast tonight? Once again, PC?
They can go to the website, FetLifeStation.com. That's FetLifeStation.com. And be a live participant in the audience. The chat lines are going to be open. I'm going to respond to the chat. It's going to be a beautiful thing. And then, they're going to see us later on responding to what's going on, the BS going on in BCU.
Oh, yeah. With that being said, love y'all, black folk. Love y'all. Make sure y'all catch the next video. See y'all.